blood.
Yeah.
Is that like the platelets can't, or the whatever?
Platelets, yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, your platelets can seal up, small wounds, but if there's like a major wound, then the platelets aren't enough to block it. And so if you lose a lot of blood, then you can't survive because, again, your cells don't have oxygen and so forth. So yeah, you can lose, if you lose a large amount of blood, that can be deadly. And so that's why, in a situation like that, they have to immediately try and stop the bleeding. That's also when you would need a transfusion of blood, like they were just talking about, when people donate blood. If you have an emergency situation, you may need a transfusion of blood to help keep you alive until they're able to stabilize you and close up those wounds. Yeah.
You know how, like, mouths bleed a lot? So they can, why is it like that they can stop that mouths, bleed a lot?
Well, it was different part.
You know, how I got bit from a dog that one time?
Yeah.
And then, it was bleeding a lot? How, does that?
It just means different parts of your body have different numbers of capillaries and other blood vessels. So some areas of your body, they bleed a lot if you get a cut, others do not. So it just kind of depends on the supply of blood to that part of your body. All right, so let's talk about these blood vessels. So you have, basically all of your body's tissue is surrounded by a network of blood vessels. In fact, if you were to take out all of the blood vessels that run all throughout your body, it would be 60,000 miles long. So that's a huge, huge number. Okay. And so those blood vessels come in 3 categories: arteries, veins, and capillaries. And they each are a little bit different, and we'll talk about what they do, their structure, and so on. So, first of all, arteries. So, arteries are the blood vessels that carry blood away from your heart. In fact, that's how you're going to remember what they do. So, artery starts with an A. You can remember that goes with away, because the arteries carry the blood that's leaving your heart and going other places. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. And most of them carry oxygenated blood, but not all of them. So the one that does not carry oxygenated blood is the pulmonary artery. That's the only exception to this. What kind of blood does the pulmonary artery carry? Sophia? Yeah, because where is that blood headed? Yeah, that blood that leaves the right ventricle, it goes through the pulmonary artery. That blood is headed to the lungs. So that blood is deoxygenated. All the other arteries in the body generally carry oxygenated blood. Arteries are very strong. They're elastic. They're kind of flexible. And part of the reason is because they have to withstand a lot of pressure. Every time your heart beats and your ventricles contract, they're forcing a large volume of blood into your arteries. And therefore, they expand. Okay, just like you force water into a water balloon, it expands. So every time your heart beats, it forces blood into your arteries and they have to expand. So they're a little bit stretchy. In fact, when you feel your pulse, I think the easiest way to feel your pulse, if you go on your neck, if you take 2 fingers, put them on like the left side of your neck and slide them towards your throat, and then when you get towards the front, there's like a little indentation here. Okay? If you poke in there a little bit, you can feel your pulse. Okay? That is one of your carotid arteries. This carotid artery that you're feeling is what brings blood from your heart up to your brain. And it's going through your neck into your brain. And the reason you could feel your pulse is because every time your heart beats, that artery swells a little bit. And that's what you're touching. Okay? That's your carotid artery in there.
Where is it,
And so, yeah, you have other arteries. You know, your arteries carry the blood all throughout your body. You have major arteries in your wrist, and that's why you can feel your pulse in your wrist. You have major arteries that go down each of your legs as well. The femoral arteries goes down and leads to each leg. So those arteries are carrying that blood out to the various parts of your heart. So like I said, it has to withstand high pressure because every time your ventricle pumps, it forces blood into that. And the other thing is, as these arteries are traveling to the various parts of your body, they start to branch. You know, the aorta is a really thick, really large artery, but as it goes to other parts, it starts branching off to go different places, and each branch gets smaller and smaller. So those end up being called arterioles, these tiny little arteries that are throughout your body. When we look at the artery, it's real smooth inside, or it should be. It's made of smooth muscle. Okay? And generally, your arteries are deeper within your body. You know, when you look like at your hands, you see all these veins on my hand. Okay, those are veins. Okay. Why do you think arteries are usually deeper in your body?
But they carry more blood.
Well, they carry more. And also, if an artery is damaged, if an artery accidentally gets cut, it can lead to a very large loss of blood because of that high pressure. That blood would spurt out of an artery, and you could lose a lot of blood. So usually our arteries are deeper within our body, and our veins are often more at the surface. Sophia, what was your question? I know you have your hand up.
You know, like in some shows, they like do this thing that if you don't have your pulse, that mean that you like die from it?
Well, if you don't have a pulse, it means your heart's not beating. You know, sometimes your pulse could be weak and harder to find, but yeah, if your heart stops, your pulse stops. And so, yeah, if your heart's not beating, you don't live for very long. So
And then, you know how you said that it's like elastic, something how like.
Yep.
Like, so is that why the heart, like when it beats, it gets bigger and smaller?
No, it's because the muscles of the heart are contracting and they're squeezing. Like if you have a little pump and you squeeze it, you force the water out of it. Same thing, that when the ventricles contract, they're squeezing the blood out into the arteries. So these arteries bring blood to all the various parts of our body, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller as they branch off, and they eventually turn into another type of blood vessel called a capillary. A capillary is a very, very thin, very, very tiny blood vessel. In fact, the capillaries are only 1 cell thick. And they basically, this is the part where material can diffuse in and out of our cells. So your capillaries are where your blood can give oxygen to the rest of the cells of your body, and where they can take away the carbon dioxide. So the capillaries are where diffusion happens. Basically, all the tissue of your body is surrounded by capillaries. That's why, like, if you get a cut on your finger, even if you don't see that there's like arteries and veins there, the reason you're bleeding is because you've damaged the capillaries. And even though they're microscopic and you don't really see them, they're still there. And they can be damaged and they can leak blood. The capillaries are so narrow that only 1 red blood cell at a time can go through. The blood cells have to sort of go single file as they move through those capillaries. So here's a little diagram. And what we see, the red blood cells are going through this capillary single file. Along the way, they're giving up oxygen. They're giving up nutrients to cells of our body. And at the same time, they're absorbing waste products that they're going to get rid of. So an artery would turn into a capillary. And then after these blood cells have given up their oxygen, where do they need to go next? What's that?
The heart.
Back to the heart. So artery turns into a capillary, which then turns into
Blood oxygenated.
no,
Vein.
a vein. And what do you think? If we look at what we talked about for artery, which way do veins go?
Up. Down.
What? Back to the heart. That's what veins do. So arteries bring the blood away from the heart, veins bring it back to the heart. Just so you can remember that they bring it to the heart. So arteries away from the heart, veins to the heart. And most veins carry deoxygenated blood. What is the exception?
The one that's in your heart, the
What one?
pulmonary vein.
Yeah, the pulmonary vein. Because that one, what type of blood does that carry?
Oxygen.
Oxygenated. Because it's coming from where?
Your heart.
The lungs. Going back to the heart. Veins are not as thick, they're not as muscular, they're not as elastic as arteries. And part of the reason is because they don't have to withstand high pressure. By the time the blood gets into the veins, it has much lower pressure than the arteries because the heart is not pumping blood directly into it. Okay? And so because of that, because there's not high pressure, the veins have a special feature. They have these valves inside of them. And the valves are sort of like one-way doors. They allow blood to only go this way. Our arteries don't need these valves because there's such high pressure, it forces the blood forward. But because the veins have lower pressure, it's possible the blood would go back in those veins. But it can't because they have these valves in them that only allow the blood to go in one way. Sometimes these valves kind of break down and don't work properly anymore, and that could lead to what's called varicose veins. If you ever heard about that, if you see like somebody, they have like thick veins like on the back of their legs or on their feet, those are called varicose veins, and the reason for those is because the valves, when the blood's coming from your feet back up into your heart, it goes, and then each time your heart beats, and then it's prevented from going back down from these valves. If those valves don't work, some of the blood can settle in those veins and they can start to swell up. They can be painful, and sometimes people have them actually removed. It's not really dangerous, they just happen. It's just people don't like how they look.
My old babysitter, she was like from Russia, I think, and she got her spider vein thingies removed, and she did tell her husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
All right, so when we look here at the blood vessels, again, arteries, which turn into capillaries, which turn into veins. This would be an artery leaving the heart. This is a vein. Where is this headed? Nope. Back to the heart. Veins carry blood to the heart. And along the way is why do we use a different color here and here?
Because one's deoxygenated, one's oxygenated.
How did this blood get deoxygenated?
Because we said because I like to wear it.
It's used by these cells. Like if these are muscle cells, they are absorbing some of that oxygen. So here it has oxygen, but then it gives it to these cells, and then it no longer has oxygen. It's headed back to the heart, so it can go back to the lungs again. All of your tissue is surrounded by these capillaries. Okay. So this is sort of a diagram that shows a capillary. We have blood coming in, blood's moving in this direction. So the blood coming in through this capillary and then leaving. So what type of blood vessel is this?
Red.
Well, it has oxygenated blood. It's an artery. Blood's going this way, so it's going away from the heart. That's an artery. What kind of blood vessel is this?
A vein.
That's a vein, because this blood's headed back to the heart. What is this whole thing called?
A capillary.
That's a capillary. They're all connected. What do you think these blobs are?
Plasma.
No.
No,
Cells.
Cells. They could be brain cells. They could be muscle cells. They could be cells in your digestive system. They could be any cell. We're just going to call them sort of general body cells. All right. So what is 4 pointing to? What are these little
blood
dots?
cells.
What type?
Red.
Yeah, those are red blood cells. Now there's this white space here surrounding the cells. It's not actually just like air. Like around your cells, it's not just filled with air, it's filled with another fluid. Well, it's plasma when it's in the blood, but it gets forced out and we call it by a different name, even though really it is plasma. We talked about it. Remember when we talked about elephantiasis?
Oh, yeah.
What body system was that a part of?
Lymphatic.
Lymphatic system. That's lymph fluid. It's just fluid. It's just like plasma that leaves the blood. And it surrounds all of our cells.
Wait, so then is 7 the plasma?
Yeah, so 7, these aren't just sort of moving around in the air, right? They're floating in the plasma. Ooh, you didn't see that.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, we
So
did.
Oxygen.
what substance goes from a red blood cell and then diffuses through the plasma into a body cell?
Oxygen.
Very good. Oxygen, yes. You guys are so
You know
smart.
why I asked if it was plasma? Because I knew 6 was coming up.
Yeah. 7, yes. These are in plasma, the part of the blood that holds all the cells.
I know what 8 and 9 is.
Now, 8 and 9. So 8, some people will sometimes they'll say, well, it must be oxygen. It's the same thing, but it's not,
CO2.
because it's not pointing from the red blood cell into the body cell. It's pointing from the plasma into the body cell. Does carbon dioxide go into our body cells? Right. So what could 8 be?
7.
What goes from our plasma into our body cells?
Oxygen. Oh, CO2?
No.
Nutrients.
Yeah, nutrients. Very good. Nutrients. Glucose or vitamins or minerals, those are carried in our plasma. And then lastly,
CO2.
what is going from our body cells into the plasma?
Carbon
Yeah.
dioxide.
Waste products. You could say carbon dioxide, but it's also other waste products.
Are we done with the notes now?
All right, good job.
Oh,
Yep.
thank God. I really don't like notes. Especially in class.
I'm starving.
Same.